held my attention. Can you tell me about it?
Yeah, it's this is a very unusual specimen. It's a rhodochrosite, and rhodochrosite is a spirit. It's the stone of spiritual foundation, right? A lot of times people look at the pink from the rhodochrosite, which is the color. You can't quite see it here, but the pink is underneath a druzy, and a druzy is like microcrystals that grow on top of a mineral,
Okay.
right? And that's called druzy. So it has a druzy or microcrystals, small crystals growing on top of a rhodochrosite formation. And on top of that is called marcasite. And marcasite is it's like iron, but it's not quite like iron. They used it in the 20s and things as a substitute for diamonds.
Oh.
It was because it polishes very bright. It looks metal, but it's not really diamond, but when it reflects in the light, it looked like diamonds. And they used it as in costume jewelry and things like that in the 20s and 30s.
Oh, interesting.
Anyway, that's the mineral. The rhodochrosite is a spiritual foundation stone. The pink, a lot of times people look at rose quartz and stones that are pink for the heart chakra.
Mm-hmm.
Heart chakra is actually green, but people relate to that color as being an aspect of the heart
like a
chakra.
rose quartz.
So you're looking at a specimen that has been covered in quartz, and the rhodochrosite is the base. So this is a very powerful stone in relationship to the spiritual. It's a fire stone. Rhodochrosite is as a fire stone. So you're dealing with the fire element. And the rose quartz, the quartz on top of it is you look at it as being foundation of spirituality and connected to the spiritual body, but also the quartz as being an amplifier of that.
Yes.
Right? It amplifies that quality of the rhodochrosite. And the marcasite, which is it's like a hematite in a sense, so it's grounding too.
Okay.
So this would be used, if you're using it in metaphysically, it would be connecting yourself with your spiritual body, the amplification of that spiritual body, or the amplification of the expression of the spiritual body, and the marcasite being the grounding of that.
Okay.
So using it in healing, it would work very good for emotional distresses and emotional
anxiety.
Yeah, it would be anxiety and grounding yourself and feeling that emotional body being grounded, and if you're feeling emotionally upset or emotionally sad or those emotions, it would help to express the spiritual, bring out the spirit inside, bring out the strength of the spirit inside. And the quartz is the amplification of that, and the marcasite is the grounding, making it very real for you.
That is beautiful.
The aspect of this, in the fact that it's so large, is I would use this, if I was to use it, I would hold it on the heart chakra, feeling it on the heart chakra. Working with the spiritual body, it would be also important to call in the higher self, and the higher self is the one you would work with and through, allowing your higher self to merge with your body, your higher self's hands merging with your hands, feeling the heart chakra through the rhodochrosite and the spiritual expression of your higher self's spiritual body, as well as your spiritual body. Feeling that spiritual flow coming through the heart chakra, allowing yourself to ground it. Feeling grounding of that.
Beautiful.
And when you're taking the spiritual body, expressing that, and the amplification of that and grounding, there's a sense of, unique peace. And it's bringing that spiritual body into your life. It's bringing that spiritual body into your physical reality.
Okay.
With using, the marcasite and that, working together with the quartz and the rhodochrosite. So it's a synergy. It's a synergy of all those three expressions of the elemental, the fire of the rose quartz, the light from the quartz itself, the rhodochrosite, the fire from the rhodochrosite, and the light from the quartz crystal and the grounding, the marcasite.
Sounds like a perfect combination.
Yeah. So that synergy creates a unique frequency and a unique vibration.
Beautiful.
And so
Yes.
that's this
Move
piece.
on to the next piece, the Lemurian quartz.
Lemurian quartz, okay. Most people don't even know they've heard Lemuria, but there's a whole story about Lemuria. Lemuria was a civilization that existed before Atlantis. We were a pristine planet at that time. The guesstimated period of time, they and I've heard different times, but over 250,000 years ago. And over 250,000 years ago, the planet was like a open, pristine,
Paradise.
virgin, you could say a virgin paradise. Untouched.
Yeah.
However, there were humans, and those humans were more connected to the, not as advanced as we are now. You could call them the Cro-Magnon or Neanderthal, but more the Neanderthal genetics at that time. The Earth was an open book, and it was also an opportunity for those who wanted to come and manipulate that world genetically. They saw the Earth as a big laboratory or an opportunity to experiment. To really understand Lemuria, you have to understand that there's different constellations and races, right? The Pleiades is one of those constellations and one of those portals that consciousness came through. The other portal is Sirius, the star Sirius. And the elemental beings came through the star Sirius. Through the Pleiades were the humanoids, and the humanoids, advanced humanoids, benevolent consciousnesses, advanced beings, which we are ancestors to. They are our future ancestors. We are the descendants of those future ancestors. The star Sirius was a portal where all physical reality actually began.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the star Sirius is the elemental beings. They are humanoid, but they take on the animal, the guardian animal, or the archetype animals like the whale, the dolphin, the eagle. These beings were elemental beings that were connected to the fairy realm, okay? And the fairy realm is the oldest of the consciousnesses in our universe. The elemental beings are the oldest, the most. And when the goddess created physical reality, the way the story's told is she blew a bubble into physical reality, and that portal came through the star Sirius. where the star Sirius is the portal, is the doorway back home to the goddess.
Right down off of Orion, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
And so the Pleiades and the stars and Sirius also being the brightest star in the sky, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the elemental beings, those advanced beings, and there's many other universes, but in our solar system, or excuse me, in our universe, that is where consciousness came through. That's where it manifested. And the portal from the Pleiades and those beings advanced, and then there's the Orion. The Orion constellation is the reptilians.
Ah.
The reptilian mind, the breed, feed, fight, flight, domination, control, manipulation, deception, cold-blooded, no empathy, no caring. It's like a reptile, like you would think a reptile to be. The reptilian races were more like the mad scientists of their time. They saw the Earth, this pristine Earth, as being an opportunity to come and play, but not in a good way.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
They started doing genetic manipulations and aberrations of the genetics and work and interacting and interfering with the genetics of these innocent virgin humans.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, the beings from the Pleiades and the beings from Sirius saw this going on Earth at that time. And it wasn't something that was accepted as universal law. They're going against, they're interfering, they're experimenting. A lot of our quote-unquote mythical creatures at that time were experiments.
Like the Minotaur and a
The
lot of
Minotaur
Greek
and
mythology.
and the Cyclops and all the different ones were actual genetic experiments.
Okay.
The Pleiadians and the Syrian beings saw this going on and said, well, this is not right. This is against universal law, and we instead of lowering themselves to their level and battling them and fighting them, they came up with their own concept and idea. And that idea and that concept was what was believed by all the other consciousnesses that time as impossible. You're not going to be able to accomplish this. And that was to, instead of lowering themselves to that level, they were going to have their own grand experiment, their own way of integrating their genetics, their consciousness, their spiritual awareness and vibration and frequencies with the humans. And at that time there was a continent that was hidden under a mist that covered the earth.
Okay.
It was a mist that was hidden from the air. You couldn't see it from the air. And it's where the Hawaiian Islands are a part of Lemuria.
Yeah.
They decided that this would be a perfect location to do their experiments. So that we took the best of the best. We took the advanced spiritual beings and the genetically humanoid and advanced beings who devoted their spirit and their souls to this experiment. And we incarnated on this continent that was hidden from the air, and that was Lemuria. It was called Lemuria. We had mountains where the mountains were covered in snow, and we had deserts, and we had tropical areas because it was a whole continent.
Wow.
The experiment went on for quite a few generations. And at the same time, Atlantis was being formed.
Okay.
And Atlantis was where you have to understand time as being people think of time as being linear, but
Yeah.
it's not.
Right.
The past, present, and future are always going on simultaneously,
Same
or
time.
is happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
So basically, if we do it in linear form, Lemuria was there to offset what was being done in the negative experiments that they were doing with the reptilian races,
Okay.
the mad scientists,
Yeah.
you could call them, right?
I love that.
Right. And what happened was Lemuria was a combination of working with the mineral kingdom and the crystal kingdom and or the crystal kingdom and the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom and the fairy, right?
All the
Very
elementals.
active working with the fairy. And those that thought that, well, this is crazy, this never going to be a success. Nobody could believe what occurred in Lemuria was and did become a total success. We kept our knowledge in the crystals. The crystals, ascenders, receivers, amplifiers, recorders. They recorded that knowledge. They recorded that information. They were our ways of taking that knowledge and understanding and power and infusing it and programming them into the crystals. Different crystals were used for healing. Different crystals were, I have Lemurian crystals. I have crystals from Lemuria.
Wow.
This happens to be a Lemurian quartz.
Beautiful.
When they find a true Lemurian quartz, before Lemuria it didn't extinct, but it went, when it was complete, when the experiment was over. There's much more to the Lemuria as to, and Lazarus is a good source for that. Lazarus tells the whole story of Lemuria, from beginning to end, and understanding our part in it. And a lot of us who were part of that experiment have come back at this time to awaken the crystals and to remind people and to take those crystals that had been programmed, have come back to the crystal keepers, have come back to the way showers and the sentinels and the dream keepers and the dream weavers, and there's a whole accomplishment, because we as a consciousness at that time took that knowledge and that information and what we learned in Lemuria and stored it and programmed it into those crystals. And at that time, the other experiment was going on, and there was a genetic disturbance that was going against their agenda. They had created human slaves and all types of things at that time.
The mad scientists.
Yeah, and they were, the way to start all over was to wipe them all out genetically and start over, and that's where you hear about the Great Flood. Well, as Lemurians, we saw this coming. We knew this was going to happen. And there's those of us who left the planet and went off into colonizing other planets with that knowledge and information. There's a race called the ancient builders who did a lot of our structures that we see that are, they can't really say where it came from or how they got there. These monoliths and stones and things that are cut by technologies we can't even do today.
Like on Easter Island and
yeah, and there's huge monolith stones that are like 800 tons, and they're perfectly cut symmetrically in blocks that no one knows how that was the ancient builder race.
Okay.
Parts of them came through the Lemurian, but there's those of us who looked into a future. One of the things that happened during the Lemurian time was we dreamed a dream of a future had never been before. We were connected to the goddess. We were connected to God, Goddess, all that is. Our spirituality and our souls and our connection to nature was paramount, the most important. when we connected with our souls and our spirit and our and that awareness, we achieved a certain level of consciousness and awareness. Those of us who left the planet and went and colonized other planets, and then there's the others of us who saw the future of a future had never been before. And that's where we are now. We're in a new paradigm. And we dream that dream in Lemurian. We dream a dream of a future had never been before. And everybody thought it was crazy and nuts and how can you do that? But we actually, through the dreaming of the Lemurians, dreamed this future. Those of us who left the planet, and those of us who decided to stay, allowed ourselves to be folded back into the cycle of death and rebirth. But before we did, we took the knowledge of the crystals and we went to different parts of the world and we buried that information. We buried those crystals. When you find the true Lemurian quartz, it's literally in a pocket with other crystals that are laid there.
Oh,
They're put there.
that is so cool. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, true Lemurian quartz are actually found in locations that where those were dug and put in the ground.
That is so interesting.
Okay.